The coffee splashed over the counter, burning Maya Taylor's fingers as she juggled 3 cups and the morning rush chaos at being there, done that. It wasn't her fault that the café was understaffed on the busiest Monday of the year, the first truly cold day of October, when everyone in Manhattan suddenly decided they needed caffeine to survive. "I'm so sorry." Maya called to the barista, hurriedly wiping up her mess while trying to maintain her grip on the remaining cups. "Double espresso for Grant," the barista called, sliding another cup onto the counter. Maya glanced at her watch. 20 minutes until her shift at the bookstore across the street. She should have just enough time to deliver these coffees to her coworkers if she hurried. She grabbed what she thought was her final ordered cup of simple black coffee and rushed toward the door. "Miss, that's not your order." Someone called behind her, but the morning din drowned out the voice as she pushed through the door and into the crisp autumn air. Oliver Jensen watched the petite brunette disappear with his coffee, a mixture of annoyance and amusement crossing his features. He'd been waiting 15 minutes for that cup, 15 minutes he didn't have to spare on a day like today. "I'm sorry, sir. Let me make you another right away," the barista said, recognition flickering in her eyes as she realized who he was. Oliver waved away her concern. "It's fine. Just make it quick, please." He checked his Patek Philippe watch, a $300,000 timepiece he wore with the casual disregard of someone who could buy 1,000 more without blinking. The acquisition meeting was in 40 minutes, and his presence was non-negotiable. Not when you were finalizing the purchase of your 12th shipping company in 5 years. The new coffee arrived in record time. Oliver took a sip and nodded his approval before leaving a $100 bill in the tip jar, his standard morning routine. As he stepped outside, his driver opened the door to his Bentley, but something made Oliver pause. Through the large windows of bookmark books across the street, he caught a glimpse of the coffee thief. "Give me a moment," he told his driver, and before he could question his own impulse, he was crossing the street. Maya was just settling behind the register when the bell above the door chimed. She looked up and froze. The man who entered wasn't their usual customer. Everything about him screamed money, from his impeccably tailored navy suit to his confident stride. His dark hair was styled perfectly, and his jawline could cut glass. But it was his eyes, piercing blue and intensely focused on her, that made her breath catch. "You stole my coffee," he said simply, his voice deep and unexpectedly warm. Maya blinked. "I what?" He raised the cup in his hand. "This is my second one. You took the first." She glanced down at the cup beside the register, the one she'd been about to drink, and noticed for the first time the name scrawled on the side. Oliver, not Grant. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she said, feeling her cheeks burn. "It was chaotic, and I thought, I can pay you back." Oliver found himself momentarily speechless, taking in her genuine embarrassment. She wasn't what he expected. In his world, people were calculated, every move designed to impress or manipulate. This woman's transparent sincerity was refreshing. "Keep it," he said with a slight smile. "Consider it a gift from a stranger." Something about her made him want to linger, the way her hazel eyes widened in surprise, or perhaps how she tucked a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear in a gesture that seemed both nervous and endearing. "That's very kind, but I insist on making it right." She reached for her wallet. "How much was it?" $4.75, he replied, amused by the triviality of the amount in his world. She handed him a $5 bill. "Please take it." Their fingers brushed as he accepted the money, and Oliver felt an unexpected jolt. He couldn't remember the last time he'd experienced such a genuine interaction. In his position, people were either intimidated by him or wanted something from him. "I'm Maya, by the way." "Maya Taylor," she offered with a small smile. "Oliver Jensen," he replied, deliberately omitting any details that might reveal his status. For once, he wanted to be just a man having a conversation with an attractive woman. The bell chimed again as another customer entered. Maya gave him an apologetic look. "Well, thank you for being understanding about your coffee, Oliver. I guess I'll see you around. It was a casual goodbye, the kind strangers exchanged without expectation. But as Oliver stepped back onto the street, he found himself unwilling to let this be their only interaction. The next morning, Oliver instructed his driver to stop at Billionaire, done that at precisely 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes earlier than his usual time. He had spent an embarrassing amount of the previous day thinking about Maya Taylor, even during his acquisition meeting. His CFO had needed to repeat a question twice, something that had never happened before. Oliver entered the café and immediately spotted her in line, her hair gathered in a messy bun, dressed in a simple sweater and jeans. She looked even lovelier in the morning light. When she reached the counter, he stepped forward. "Let me get that," he said, surprising her. Maya turned, recognition lighting her face. "Oliver, hi, consider it an actual gift this time," he said, handing his black card to the barista. "And whatever I usually get," he added. "You don't have to do that," Maya protested, but her smile suggested she was pleased. "I want to," he replied simply. "Think of it as cosmic balance for yesterday's mix-up." They moved to the pickup area together. "You work across the street every day?" he asked, Monday through Thursday. "I'm trying to save up while I finish my master's in library science." She paused. "What about you? What do you do?" The question was so ordinary, so uncommonly asked of him directly, that Oliver almost laughed. Most people in New York's business circles knew exactly who he was and what he did. "I'm in shipping," he said, which wasn't a lie but was certainly an understatement for the owner of Jensen Maritime Group, a conglomerate worth billions with operations in 47 countries. "Like packages?" she asked innocently. This time he did laugh. "Something like that. Bigger packages." "Ship-sized ones, actually." Her coffee arrived first, a vanilla latte with an extra shot. He filed away the information without thinking. "Well, thank you for the coffee, Oliver. I need to get to work, but this was nice." For the first time in years, Oliver Jensen acted without calculation. "Would you like to have dinner with me tonight?" Maya looked surprised but not displeased. "I don't normally accept dates from men I've just met." "That's wise," he acknowledged. "But I promise I'm not an axe murderer, just a guy who'd like to get to know you better." She studied him for a moment, and Oliver realized he was holding his breath waiting for her answer, another first. "Okay," she finally said, "but nothing fancy. I'm a graduate student, remember? I'd feel out of place somewhere expensive." Oliver bit back a smile at the irony. "Of course. I know a great little Italian place in the village, very casual." They exchanged numbers, and Oliver watched her leave with a strange feeling in his chest. It took him a moment to identify it. Anticipation. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt that about anything other than a business deal. His driver raised an eyebrow when Oliver returned to the car, grinning like a teenager. "Change of plans today, James. I need to make a reservation at Luciano's for tonight." "Luciano's, sir? Not your usual choice." Oliver glanced out the window at Maya's retreating figure. "I'm feeling unusually ordinary today. It's quite remarkable." Maya spent the day alternating between excitement and anxiety about her impromptu date. She'd done some casual research on Oliver Jensen during her lunch break and found nothing. Not even a LinkedIn profile, which struck her as odd for someone who worked in shipping. But his warm smile and the genuine interest in his eyes had seemed sincere. And the way he'd laughed when she asked about his job, not mockingly, but with a kind of delighted surprise, had been charming. At 7:00 p.m., Maya was waiting outside her apartment building in the most casual but nice outfit she owned: black jeans, a soft blue blouse, and a leather jacket. She half expected Oliver to arrive in a taxi, but her jaw dropped when a sleek black Bentley pulled up instead. The driver stepped out and opened the back door. "Miss Taylor, Mr. Jensen is expecting you." Confused, Maya approached the vehicle. Oliver sat inside, looking somewhat apologetic. "I know this seems extravagant," he said as she slid onto the leather seat beside him, "but James drives me everywhere. It's a work requirement." Maya raised an eyebrow. "What kind of shipping company requires a chauffeur-driven Bentley?" Oliver cleared his throat. "A successful one." She laughed, letting it go for now. The car glided through Manhattan traffic with remarkable ease, as if other vehicles simply made way for it. When they arrived at Luciano's, a charming, intimate restaurant with flickering candles in the windows, Maya was relieved to see it looked reasonably casual, despite the maitre d's obvious recognition of Oliver. "Mr. Jensen, your usual table is ready," he said, leading them to a secluded corner. "You come here often enough to have a usual table?" Meyer asked as they sat down. "It's one of the few places in the city where people don't bother me while I eat," he replied, then seemed to catch himself. "I mean, it's quiet." Their conversation flowed surprisingly easily. Oliver asked thoughtful questions about her studies, her love of books, and her family in Ohio. Maya found herself talking more than she normally would on a first date, drawn out by his genuine interest. She learned he was originally from Boston, had studied at Harvard, like everyone from Boston, he'd said dismissively, and had taken over his father's business several years ago. "And what about your family?" she asked as they shared a tiramisu. A shadow crossed his face. "My parents are both gone now. My father died 6 years ago, my mother 2 years before that. No siblings." "I'm sorry," Maya said softly, instinctively reaching across the table to touch his hand. Oliver looked down at their hands with an expression of wonder. "It's been a long time since anyone has expressed sympathy without immediately asking about the company's succession plan." "The what?" Meyer asked, confused. He smiled, turning his hand to hold hers properly. "Nothing important." When the check came, Oliver took it without looking. Maya caught a glimpse of the total and barely suppressed a gasp. Even at this casual place, dinner had cost more than her weekly grocery budget. "This was lovely," she said as they stepped outside into the cool night air. "Thank you. Would you like to walk for a bit?" Oliver asked, nodding to James, who seemed to understand the unspoken instruction, and drove away. They strolled through the village, their conversation turning to books, films, and music. Maya was surprised to discover Oliver's extensive knowledge of literature. He could quote Steinbeck and Austen with equal ease. "I didn't expect a shipping executive to be so well-read," she commented. "I travel a lot." "Books are good company," he replied. Then, after a moment's hesitation, "Maya, there's something I should probably tell you about my work." Before he could continue, a passing couple stopped abruptly. The man stared at Oliver with undisguised recognition. "Mr. Jensen, I didn't expect to see you here." "I'm David Mercer from Goldman Sachs. We met at the Economic Forum last year. I've been trying to set up a meeting with your team about the Asian expansion." Oliver's demeanor shifted subtly, his posture straightening, his expression becoming more guarded. "Mr. Mercer, yes, I remember. Please contact my office to arrange that." The man continued, oblivious to the intrusion. "My wife and I were just discussing your acquisition of Pacific Route. Brilliant move. The stock is already up 12%. Maya watched this exchange with growing confusion. "Thank you." "If you'll excuse us," Oliver said firmly, guiding Maya away with a gentle hand at the small of her back. Once they were out of earshot, Maya turned to him. "What was that about? Stock prices? Asian expansion? Goldman Sachs executives know you by sight," Oliver sighed. "That's what I was about to explain. My shipping company is significant." "How significant?" he hesitated. "Jensen Maritime Group is the third largest shipping conglomerate in the world." Maya stopped walking. "And you are?" "The CEO and majority owner." She stared at him. "You're not just some executive. You're a billionaire, technically," he admitted, looking uncharacteristically uncomfortable. "Though I hate that term. It reduces a person to their net worth." Maya felt like the ground beneath her had shifted. She thought about their coffee encounter, how he'd acted so normal about a $5 bill. How he'd said he was in shipping like he drove a UPS truck. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, not angry but genuinely curious. Oliver looked at her directly, vulnerability clear in his eyes. "Because for the first time in years, someone was talking to me like I was just a person. Not a wallet or a business opportunity or a status symbol." The raw honesty in his voice touched something in Maya. She studied him, still the same man who had laughed about her stealing his coffee, who had listened intently to her stories about graduate school struggles, who had quoted Jane Austen while they walked through Greenwich Village. "So, what now?" she asked quietly. "Now I take you home if you'd like. And then, if you're willing, I ask if I can see you again, not as Oliver Jensen, CEO, but just as Oliver, the guy who likes black coffee and 19th century literature." Maya considered this for a moment, then smiled. "I'd like that." In the weeks that followed, Maya discovered what it meant to date one of the wealthiest men in America, both the wonder and the complications. Oliver made efforts to keep their dates relatively normal, cooking dinner at his penthouse, which occupied an entire floor of a building he owned, taking her to small theaters and out-of-the-way restaurants. But his world inevitably intruded. There were the photographers who sometimes followed them, the business associates who interrupted dinners, and the subtle changes in service whenever they went anywhere together. "I'm sorry about this," he said one evening after they'd been moved from a 30-minute wait to an immediate table at a popular restaurant. "I try not to use my name to get special treatment, but it happens anyway." "It's not your fault," Maya assured him, though she was still adjusting to the stares and whispers that often accompanied them. She maintained her job at the bookstore and her graduate studies, refusing Oliver's offers to help financially. "I need to do this myself," she'd insisted, and he respected her independence, even as it sometimes frustrated him. Their fourth date had ended with a kiss that left them both breathless, Oliver pressing her gently against her apartment door, his hands cupping her face as if she were something precious and rare. Their relationship deepened from there, each discovering in the other something they hadn't known they were missing. For Maya, it was Oliver's unwavering support and the way he looked at her like she was the most fascinating person he'd ever met. For Oliver, it was Maya's refreshing honesty and the way she treated him as a man, not a balance sheet. "You know what I realized today?" he told her one evening as they sat on his terrace overlooking Central Park, the city lights glittering below them. "You've never once asked me to buy you anything or use my connections for your benefit." Maya looked surprised. "Is that unusual?" "You have no idea," he said, kissing her hand. "It's extraordinary." Their first real argument came 3 months into their relationship, after Maya attended a charity gala as Oliver's date. A socialite had cornered her by the ladies' room. "You're quite the clever one, aren't you?" the woman had said with a brittle smile. "Snagging America's most eligible bachelor." "What's your secret? It can't just be the pretty face." Maya had returned to Oliver shaken and angry. "Is that what people think, that I'm with you for your money?" "People will always talk," he'd said, trying to comfort her. "It doesn't matter what they think, it matters to me. I didn't even know who you were when we met. I liked you because you were kind about a coffee mix-up." Their argument continued back at his apartment, with Maya feeling suddenly out of place in his world of extreme privilege. "Maybe this was a mistake," she'd said finally, tears in her eyes. "We come from completely different worlds, Oliver." He'd looked stricken. "Don't say that, these are just growing pains." He took her hands in his. "Maya, I love you. I've never said that to anyone before, but I love you and we can figure this out." His declaration had stopped her cold. "You love me, more than anything," he'd admitted. "You're the first real thing in my life in as long as I can remember." They'd worked through it, establishing boundaries and expectations. Oliver became more mindful of how his wealth affected their relationship, while Maya grew more confident navigating his world without losing herself in it. 6 months after the coffee mix-up, Oliver took Maya back to Billionaire, done that early on a Sunday morning. He'd arranged for the café to be empty except for them, though he'd kept the regular staff to maintain the authentic atmosphere. "This feels like a full-circle moment," Maya said, smiling as they sat at the same counter where she'd first stolen his coffee. "That's the idea," Oliver replied, seeming unusually nervous. "Do you know what I thought the first time I saw you? That I was a coffee thief." she teased. He shook his head. I thought, there's someone who doesn't have any idea who I am, and it's the most liberating feeling I've ever experienced. He took her hand. Maya, meeting you was the best accident of my life. Before she could respond, he was sliding off his chair and kneeling before her, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. I had planned an elaborate speech, but I think simplicity suits us better, he said, his voice uncharacteristically unsteady. I love you. I love your intelligence, your integrity, your kindness. I love how you see me, not my wealth or status, but me. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? He opened the box to reveal a ring that somehow managed to be both spectacular and tasteful, an emerald-cut diamond on a platinum band, elegant in its simplicity. Maya's hands flew to her mouth. Oliver, if it's too soon, I understand, he rushed to add. We could have a long engagement. I just know that I want to spend my life with you. Tears filled Maya's eyes as she looked from the ring to the man before her, the billionaire businessman who had become simply her Oliver, the man who brought her coffee in bed and debated classic literature with her for hours. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, I'll marry you. Oliver slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the passion and tenderness that had grown between them over the past 6 months. I love you, she murmured against his lips. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, just you. That's all I've ever wanted, to be with you, he replied. Just Oliver. The news of their engagement exploded across business publications and social media. Shipping magnate Jensen to wed bookstore clerk screamed one headline. Billionaire finds love with ordinary grad student, declared another. Maya struggled with the sudden invasion of privacy. Reporters appeared outside the bookstore and her apartment. Oliver's security team had to be expanded. Their private love story became public property overnight. I'm sorry about all this, Oliver said after a particularly intrusive photographer had tried to follow them into a restaurant. I should have warned you how intense it would get. You couldn't have prepared me for this, Meyer admitted, but we'll weather it together. They decided on a small wedding, though small in Oliver's world still meant 100 guests at his family's estate in the Hamptons. Maya wore a simple but exquisite gown designed specially for her, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers that reminded her of Ohio. Oliver's voice shook slightly as he recited his vows. Maya, before I met you, I had everything and nothing simultaneously. You've taught me the difference between success and happiness. I promise to spend every day trying to make you as happy as you've made me. Maya's vows were equally heartfelt. Oliver, you may have been born into privilege, but the richest thing about you is your heart. I promise to always see the man behind the name, to be your partner in all things, and to remind you that the most valuable things in life can't be bought like the love I feel for you. They honeymooned on a private island in the Maldives, spending 2 blissful weeks away from the world's scrutiny. Upon their return, they settled into a new routine, Oliver continuing to run his business empire, but with more balance in his life. Maya completing her master's degree and starting a foundation to improve literacy in underserved communities. 2 years after their wedding, Maya gave birth to their daughter, Sophia. Oliver was transformed by fatherhood, becoming even more determined to create a legacy beyond wealth. I want her to understand value the way you do, he told Maya as they watched their sleeping infant. Not in dollars, but in character and kindness. She will, Maya assured him. We'll teach her together. On the 5th anniversary of the day they met, Oliver surprised Maya by taking her back to Billionaire. Done that now, one of a chain of cafes he had quietly purchased and expanded, improving working conditions and wages while maintaining the cozy atmosphere. I have something for you, he said, handing her a small gift box. Inside was a custom-made coffee mug with 2 dates engraved on it, the day she took his coffee and their wedding day. From the best mistake I ever made to the best decision I ever made, he said, kissing her tenderly. Who would have thought stealing a billionaire's coffee would lead to all this? Maya laughed, leaning into his embrace. Oliver smiled against her hair. I'm just grateful you weren't paying attention that morning. Some accidents are fate in disguise. As they sat together, watching 3-year-old Sophia carefully sip her hot chocolate, Maya reflected on their journey. She had accidentally taken a coffee order and found a life she never could have imagined, not because of the wealth or the privileges, but because of the man who had seen in her something worth pursuing. "What are you thinking about?" Oliver asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "About how sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin in the most ordinary ways," Maya replied, squeezing his hand. "And how grateful I am that I grabbed the wrong coffee cup that day." "To happy accidents," Oliver said, raising his mug in a toast. "And to love that was worth every drop," Maya answered, knowing that their story, which had begun with a simple mix-up, had become something rare and precious. Something no amount of money could ever buy.